Power is not about being liked, it's about gaining control over situations and people. Throughout history, the most successful individuals achieved greatness by mastering power, not kindness. Names that endure didn't get there by playing it safe or being nice. Real power comes from taking control, not from adhering to moral ideals. Machiavelli understood that success in power requires ruthlessness, decisiveness, and strategic manipulation. His insights reveal that true power lies in controlling circumstances, others, and most importantly, oneself. Machiavelli was not just a philosopher or theorist. He was a man deeply embedded in the politics of Renaissance Italy, a time and place where the thirst for power was ever present, and where rulers, kingdoms, and city-states constantly fought for dominance. The Prince, his most famous work, is less a theoretical exercise and more of a practical guide for those seeking to gain, maintain, and extend power. In it, Machiavelli lays out a blueprint for ruling that has inspired countless leaders, from monarchs to modern politicians, and yes, even corporate giants. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the heart of Machiavelli's teachings, examining how his principles on manipulation, strategy, and ruthless decision-making have been applied by the most influential figures in history, and how they can help you achieve your own path to unstoppable power today. We will look beyond the traditional image of Machiavelli as the cynical, power-hungry advisor and instead reveal him as a master of understanding the dynamics of human nature, and, more importantly, how to manipulate those dynamics for your own advantage. So let's explore how unleashing your own dark side, guided by Machiavelli's ideas, could lead you to unimaginable power. To fully grasp the power behind Machiavelli's philosophy, it's crucial to understand the man himself and the turbulent world he lived in. Machiavelli wasn't just a philosopher sitting comfortably in an ivory tower, detached from the real world. He was embedded in the heart of Renaissance Italy, a time marked by ruthless political gamesmanship and constant instability. The political landscape in Italy during the 15th and 16th centuries was fragmented and chaotic. City-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan were locked in a constant struggle for dominance, while foreign powers such as France and Spain were always looking to intervene. The power shifts were fast, violent, and unforgiving. Political alliances were often temporary, and betrayal was as common as loyalty. Machiavelli himself was born into this chaotic world in 1469, in Florence, one of the leading city-states in Italy. His family wasn't wealthy or noble, but his sharp mind and ambition quickly made him an important figure. He entered public service in his early 20s, becoming a diplomat for the Republic of Florence. During this time, he traveled across Europe, meeting with kings, princes, and other influential figures. His diplomatic career gave him a front-row seat to the often brutal power plays that defined European politics. This exposure to high-stakes political maneuvering would shape his thinking, making him a realist rather than an idealist. He understood that politics was a battlefield, not a space for moral ideals, and that only those who mastered the rules of the game could survive, let alone thrive. However, Machiavelli's career took a dramatic turn in 1512. The Medici family, who had been temporarily ousted from Florence, returned to power, and Machiavelli found himself in disgrace. His political career ended in a swift fall when he was arrested, tortured, and exiled. It was this personal downfall that led him to write The Prince, a work that was as much an attempt to regain favor with the Medici as it was a reflection of his cynical understanding of political power. In The Prince, Machiavelli offered practical advice to rulers, based on his years of first-hand experience and observation. He understood that power was not a moral ideal to be pursued, but a cold, calculated force that had to be won and maintained at all costs. Despite Machiavelli's fall from political grace, his writings became some of the most important texts in the history of political thought. Why have his ideas endured for over 500 years? Because they are grounded in the brutal reality of human nature. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to justify cruelty or immorality. He wrote it to show that the path to power often requires navigating a world that is far from fair or just. His ideas are timeless because they reflect the unvarnished truth about politics and power, truths that still apply today, whether in the corridors of corporate boardrooms or on the global political stage. Machiavelli's timelessness lies in his understanding of human nature and the structures of power. His advice was pragmatic. It wasn't about what you wanted the world to be, but about what it actually was. In his eyes, power wasn't a gift, a blessing, or something that could be inherited by good fortune. It was a game to be played, and only those who mastered the rules of manipulation, strategy, and timing would ever achieve true control. This ruthless realism is what makes Machiavelli so relevant even today. Whether it's a business leader trying to outmaneuver competitors, a politician navigating shifting alliances, or an individual striving to climb the social ladder, Machiavelli's teachings are a roadmap to understanding and mastering power in all its forms. To truly understand Machiavelli's philosophy, we need to break down the core concepts he introduced in The Prince, as these principles form the backbone of his approach to power. At its heart, The Prince is a manual for anyone seeking to navigate the treacherous waters of political life, a guide for those who wish to gain, maintain, and expand power, regardless of the moral cost. Three key concepts stand out as the pillars of Machiavelli's philosophy. Virtù versus fortuna, the idea that the ends justify the means, and the relationship between fear and love in leadership. These ideas not only reflect Machiavelli's view of power, but also reveal his pragmatic approach to leadership. The first of these core concepts is virtù and fortuna, two terms that often appear together in Machiavelli's writings, yet represent fundamentally different forces. Virtù, in Machiavelli's context, doesn't simply refer to virtue or goodness. It's closer to the concept of boldness, skill, and the ability to adapt to ever-changing circumstances. Machiavelli uses virtù to describe a ruler's ability to take decisive action, seize opportunities, and shape the course of events through their own talent, strength, and willpower. It's about having the drive and resourcefulness to bend the world to your will, making your own luck, so to speak. On the other hand, fortuna represents the concept of luck, fate, or the uncontrollable aspects of life. It's the unpredictable forces that can either help you or hinder you, whether that's the rise of a new political power, a sudden war, or a change in public opinion. Machiavelli acknowledges that fortuna plays a role in power, but he doesn't see it as something that should be left to chance. Instead, he emphasizes that a skilled ruler with virtù can mitigate the effects of fortuna, taking advantage of favorable circumstances and weathering the storms of misfortune. Fortuna may throw challenges your way, but those who possess virtù know how to turn even the most dire situation to their advantage. This balance between virtù and fortuna is crucial for understanding Machiavelli's approach to power. Power is not simply about luck or destiny. It's about skill, preparation, and the ability to take control of your circumstances. Virtù enables a ruler to seize opportunities that fortuna presents, while also adapting and overcoming the setbacks that fortuna may deliver. This concept encourages individuals to take control of their own fate rather than waiting for things to happen by chance. It's a call to action for those who wish to master the game of power, not as passive players, but as active agents who shape their own destiny. Perhaps the most controversial concept in The Prince is Machiavelli's assertion that the ends justify the means. This phrase, often misquoted and misunderstood, is not a call for unchecked brutality or cruelty. Rather, it's a pragmatic approach to achieving one's goals, no matter the obstacles in the way. Machiavelli argues that a ruler must be willing to do whatever is necessary, whether that means deceit, manipulation, or even violence, in order to secure and maintain power. For Machiavelli, the ultimate goal of a ruler is not to be morally virtuous, but to be successful, and the preservation of power and stability is the highest priority. Machiavelli doesn't advocate for mindless cruelty, but he does argue that a leader's primary responsibility is to the state and its survival. If harsh measures are required to protect the state, then they should be taken without hesitation. He uses the example of Cesare Borgia, a ruthless Italian nobleman who used manipulation, betrayal, and force to consolidate his power, as a model of effective leadership. Although Borgia's actions may seem cruel or immoral, Machiavelli praises him for his decisiveness and ability to act without hesitation. In Machiavelli's view, such actions may be regrettable, but they are often necessary for achieving political success and ensuring stability. This idea extends far beyond medieval politics. It's still evident in the way power is exercised today. Political leaders, business tycoons, and influencers often face moral dilemmas in their pursuit of power, and the question remains, should they be constrained by ethical considerations, or should they act ruthlessly to achieve their objectives? Machiavelli's answer is clear. The preservation and expansion of power must come first, and if achieving that goal requires morally questionable actions, then so be it. This cold pragmatism is what sets Machiavelli apart from many of his contemporaries, whose political writings were rooted in idealistic notions of virtue and justice. Another critical concept Machiavelli explores in The Prince is the relationship between fear and love. Machiavelli famously claims that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved, but never hated. This principle reflects his understanding of human nature. People are fickle, and their affections are often unreliable. Love, in Machiavelli's eyes, is a fragile foundation upon which to build power. People may love their ruler in times of prosperity, but when things go wrong, when resources are scarce or crises arise, that love can quickly fade. Fear, on the other hand, is far more dependable. Fear is a more consistent motivator because people are driven by the desire to avoid pain and suffering. But Machiavelli is not suggesting that a ruler should be cruel or unjust for the sake of instilling fear. Rather, he argues that a ruler must strike a balance, creating a fear that is severe enough to command respect, but not so excessive that it breeds hatred. A ruler who is feared can maintain control even in difficult times because people will be more likely to obey out of self-preservation. However, a ruler who is hated will face constant rebellion, resentment, and eventual downfall. Machiavelli provides the example of King Louis VII of France, who was both loved and feared by his subjects. Louis's ability to maintain both fear and affection was a key factor in his political success. He understood that people may love him in times of peace, but fear was necessary to maintain order during times of crisis. This balance between fear and love is a subtle art, one that requires a ruler to read the situation and respond accordingly. In modern times, the concept of fear versus love is still relevant. Leaders, whether in politics or business, must manage their public image carefully. They must navigate the fine line between appearing strong and authoritative while avoiding crossing into cruelty or oppression. The balance between these two forces is essential for maintaining control and achieving long-term success. To truly understand Machiavelli's philosophy, we must confront one of its most unsettling aspects: his approach to morality. The Prince is often seen as a guide to ruthlessness, manipulation, and cunning, and Machiavelli's insistence on using whatever means necessary to achieve political success has led many to label him a cynic or even an amoral strategist. But to dismiss Machiavelli as simply an advocate for cruelty is to miss the deeper and more complex purpose of his ideas. Machiavelli's morality was not about adhering to conventional ethical norms or religious principles. In fact, he explicitly rejects the traditional Christian view that rulers should be just, merciful, and virtuous. Instead, he offers a political morality that is deeply pragmatic. For Machiavelli, the measure of a ruler's actions is not whether they align with traditional notions of right and wrong, but whether they lead to the preservation and expansion of power. His view of politics is grounded in a harsh understanding of human nature. People are inherently self-interested, fickle, and driven by fear and desire. Because of this, rulers must be prepared to act in ways that may seem morally dubious, but are necessary to secure their rule and the stability of the state. In his view, morality is subordinate to the interests of power. This is where his famous maxim, "the ends justify the means," comes into play. A ruler, Machiavelli argues, cannot afford to be shackled by ethical concerns when the stakes are so high. If cruelty, deceit, or manipulation are required to achieve the desired political result, then they are justified. Of course, Machiavelli is careful to distinguish between necessary acts of cruelty and those that are excessive. He argues that while cruelty may be necessary to maintain power, it should be used sparingly, with precision, and always in a way that ensures the ruler's long-term survival. The ruler who is excessively cruel will breed resentment, and that resentment will eventually lead to rebellion and downfall. Machiavelli's political realism does not condone arbitrary cruelty, but it does recognize that, in the game of power, there are no moral absolutes. What matters is the ability to maintain control and safeguard the interests of the state. For example, Machiavelli praises Cesare Borgia for his ruthless tactics in consolidating power in central Italy, noting that his actions, though brutal, were effective in creating order in a chaotic region. Borgia's willingness to use deceit, force, and political manipulation to achieve his goals made him a master of power, despite the moral cost. The idea of moral flexibility extends beyond just actions taken by rulers. Machiavelli also addresses the role of perception in maintaining power. A ruler may need to appear virtuous, even if they are not. In fact, it's often better for a ruler to be seen as virtuous, as long as they can maintain control behind the scenes. This is where the manipulation of public perception becomes a key tool in the Machiavellian arsenal. A ruler who can appear benevolent and just, while secretly using any means necessary to maintain power, is in an ideal position to dominate. This emphasis on perception and the manipulation of public opinion is another reflection of Machiavelli's understanding of human nature. People are not rational, objective beings. They are driven by emotions, fears, and desires. They often judge a ruler by appearances rather than actual actions. A ruler who can control how they are perceived by their subjects will gain their trust and loyalty, even if their actions are far from virtuous. In the modern world, this understanding of morality and perception is as relevant as ever. Political leaders, CEOs, and even social media influencers understand that the ability to craft and control an image is just as important as the ability to act decisively. Whether it's through public relations campaigns, carefully curated social media profiles, or calculated political gestures, the manipulation of perception is a powerful tool in today's world. Machiavelli's political morality is deeply unsettling because it challenges the conventional wisdom about how leaders should behave. But his ideas are grounded in a real understanding of how power works in the world. His teachings acknowledge that, in the struggle for power, leaders must be willing to set aside moral constraints and embrace a more pragmatic, results-oriented approach. For Machiavelli, the pursuit of power is not about adhering to ethical ideals, but about achieving and maintaining control, no matter the cost. Machiavelli's ideas have endured for over 5 centuries, not just because they provide insight into the politics of Renaissance Italy, but because they offer timeless principles that are still applicable today. Power dynamics, human nature, and the strategies for gaining, maintaining, and expanding influence haven't changed as much as we like to think. Whether in politics, business, or even in personal relationships, Machiavelli's teachings continue to serve as a roadmap for those looking to rise to the top. In the world of business, Machiavellian principles are alive and well, often practiced by top CEOs and entrepreneurs who understand the cutthroat nature of corporate life. Machiavelli's focus on decisiveness, boldness, and adaptability is directly applicable to the way leaders navigate the corporate ladder today. Business is a world where opportunities and threats can appear suddenly, and where one's ability to respond quickly often determines success. Much like a Renaissance prince, the modern CEO must be skilled in the art of strategy and manipulation, capable of both seizing opportunities and neutralizing threats. One of the key aspects of Machiavelli's philosophy is his focus on perception. In today's corporate world, image is everything. A CEO or business leader must know how to craft an image that commands respect and instills fear. This is not about being openly tyrannical or cruel. Rather, it's about appearing confident, competent, and decisive, even if that requires subtle manipulation behind the scenes. Companies like Apple, for instance, have successfully used their CEO's image, especially the image of Steve Jobs, as a tool to create an aura of innovation, authority, and control. Jobs' ability to inspire loyalty through his vision, while simultaneously maintaining an iron grip on the company's culture, is the essence of Machiavellian strategy. Moreover, in business, just like in politics, Machiavelli's idea that the ends justify the means is a common practice. Business leaders often make tough decisions that may seem morally ambiguous, but are justified by their ultimate goals, whether that's profitability, market dominance, or brand loyalty. Take, for example, the aggressive tactics used by companies to outmaneuver competitors. Mergers, acquisitions, and hostile takeovers are all Machiavellian strategies used to consolidate power and eliminate rivals. The moral consequences of these actions are secondary to the goal of business success. In the realm of social media and digital influence, Machiavellian principles are used extensively. The rise of influencers, content creators, and online entrepreneurs who manipulate public perception to gain followers and monetize their platforms echoes Machiavelli's insights into the importance of perception and the manipulation of public opinion. Social media, at its core, is a game of image crafting, where the public is often more concerned with how someone appears than with their actual actions or character. Influencers, for example, carefully curate their online personas, presenting an idealized version of themselves that commands admiration and loyalty. They use psychological tactics to create an aura of authority, expertise, or relatability. Whatever it takes to build a strong personal brand. Whether it's through strategic use of hashtags, creating exclusive content, or leveraging collaborations with other powerful figures, the modern influencer follows a Machiavellian playbook for gaining and maintaining power over their audience. They understand that building a loyal following requires not just charm, but manipulation of emotions, perceptions, and desires. The same Machiavellian logic applies to the world of online marketing, where businesses use sophisticated psychological tactics to drive consumer behavior. From targeted ads to persuasive copywriting, marketing campaigns often tap into deep-seated desires and fears to influence purchasing decisions. In many ways, digital marketing is a modern-day battlefield where perception, image, and manipulation are the keys to success. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers to manipulate the masses to maintain power, businesses today manipulate consumer behavior through calculated strategies designed to increase influence and control. While The Prince is often seen as a manual for rulers and political leaders, Machiavelli's principles can be applied to personal life and self-development as well. Power dynamics exist in all areas of life, from family and friendships to romantic relationships and career advancement. Machiavelli's teachings can serve as a guide for individuals seeking to navigate these dynamics, gain influence, and achieve success. One of the most straightforward applications of Machiavelli's principles in daily life is his emphasis on the importance of perception. In personal relationships, how you are perceived by others is often more important than your actual intentions or actions. Machiavelli teaches that people are swayed by appearances, and that manipulating those appearances to present yourself as confident, capable, and in control can lead to greater success in social interactions. Whether it's in a job interview, a negotiation, or a personal relationship, projecting an image of power and competence can open doors and create opportunities. Another key takeaway from Machiavelli's philosophy is the importance of adaptability. In the modern world, being able to change course quickly when circumstances shift is a vital skill. In the business world, this means being able to pivot when new opportunities or threats arise. In relationships, it means being able to adjust your approach depending on the person or situation you're dealing with. Machiavelli's virtù, the ability to seize control of situations and bend them to your will, reminds us that those who can adapt quickly and decisively are the ones who succeed. In the realm of personal development, Machiavelli's teachings also emphasize the value of strategic thinking and self-discipline. To rise to power, one must be ruthless in setting and achieving goals, relentlessly focused on self-improvement, and unafraid to make difficult decisions. Whether it's through improving your skills, building your network, or taking calculated risks, Machiavelli's advice encourages individuals to do whatever it takes to move closer to their objectives, even if that means making tough sacrifices along the way. Machiavelli's work, especially The Prince, has long been a subject of intense debate and criticism. His ideas, while praised for their sharp realism and political insight, have also been condemned for promoting manipulation, cruelty, and deceit. These criticisms come from a variety of sources: scholars, politicians, and ethicists, who argue that Machiavelli's advice is morally bankrupt and that it encourages leaders to abandon basic principles of ethics in the pursuit of power. To fully appreciate the significance of Machiavelli's work, however, we must examine these criticisms, explore the psychological implications of Machiavellianism, and discuss how these ideas have been reinterpreted over time. One of the most widely known criticisms of Machiavelli's ideas comes from the field of psychology, where the term Machiavellianism has taken on a life of its own. In psychology, Machiavellianism refers to a personality trait characterized by manipulation, deceit, and a lack of moral principles. It's often grouped with two other traits, narcissism and psychopathy, under the dark triad of personality. People with high levels of Machiavellianism are typically seen as manipulative, calculating, and focused solely on personal gain, often at the expense of others. In modern psychology, Machiavellianism is often linked to toxic leadership and unethical behavior. Research has shown that individuals with high Machiavellian traits tend to excel in environments where deception and manipulation are valued, such as in competitive corporate settings or in politics. These individuals are skilled at reading people, understanding their desires, and exploiting weaknesses for personal gain. They may be successful in the short term, but the long-term consequences of such behavior can be devastating, both for the individuals involved and for the organizations they influence. This view, which emphasizes the negative aspects of Machiavelli's ideas, paints a picture of a world where people act solely out of self-interest, with little regard for the harm they may cause others. While it's true that Machiavelli's ideas have been associated with ruthless, self-serving behavior, it's important to remember that his work is primarily concerned with political power, not personal relationships. The Prince is a manual for rulers trying to maintain control over a state, not a guide to ethical behavior in private life. In this context, Machiavelli's advocacy for manipulation and power plays is grounded in a realistic understanding of human nature. People, he argued, are driven by their own desires and will act in their own self-interest, often without regard for the common good. The challenge for rulers, then, is to navigate these realities while maintaining stability and control. This doesn't mean that Machiavelli encourages cruelty or deceit for its own sake, but rather that, in the harsh world of politics, a ruler must be prepared to do whatever is necessary to achieve and maintain power. The most significant ethical concern surrounding Machiavelli's ideas is the notion that he condones cruelty, deceit, and immorality as long as they serve the ends of power. This has led many critics to argue that Machiavelli's work promotes an unethical, utilitarian approach to leadership. His willingness to justify morally questionable actions for the sake of political gain, as seen in his discussions of Cesare Borgia and other historical figures, raises uncomfortable questions about the true nature of power and leadership. Many critics argue that by divorcing power from morality, Machiavelli creates a blueprint for authoritarianism and tyranny. His emphasis on fear as a tool for maintaining control, for example, can easily be interpreted as advocating for totalitarian rule. In the hands of unscrupulous leaders, Machiavelli's advice could justify oppression, violence, and the exploitation of the masses. The ethical dilemma here is that, while Machiavelli advocates for ruthless efficiency in maintaining power, he does not give clear guidance on where to draw the line. Where, for example, do the costs of cruelty outweigh the benefits of control? How far should a ruler go in manipulating their subjects? These are questions that Machiavelli does not answer definitively, leaving them open to interpretation and, potentially, abuse. Furthermore, some argue that Machiavelli's pragmatic approach to power undermines the pursuit of higher moral and ethical ideals. Leaders who follow Machiavelli's teachings may be more successful in maintaining power, but at what cost to the well-being of their subjects? Does the pursuit of power justify the manipulation of people's desires and fears? These are questions that Machiavelli, for all his political insight, leaves largely unaddressed. Despite the ethical criticisms, many scholars and political theorists argue that Machiavelli is often misunderstood. Far from being a promoter of ruthless tyranny, some contend that Machiavelli was a realist who understood the complexities and contradictions of power. He was not advocating for cruelty or immorality, but simply recognizing that the pursuit of power is rarely clean or moral. In this view, Machiavelli's work should be seen as a response to the idealistic political philosophies of his time, which ignored the darker aspects of human nature. Machiavelli's concept of virtue, The ability to shape one's fate through skill and decisiveness can be interpreted as an endorsement of leadership that is capable of adapting to changing circumstances, while fortuna represents the unpredictable elements that can either help or hinder a ruler's efforts. In this sense, the prince is not a guide for immoral tyrants, but a manual for leaders who must navigate a world that is often hostile and uncertain. Leaders who follow Machiavelli's advice are not necessarily evil, but simply those who understand that power, in its purest form, is about survival and control, not idealism or virtue. Some modern thinkers see Machiavelli as a figure ahead of his time, someone who understood the complex, messy realities of governance and the need for pragmatism in politics. In this reinterpretation, Machiavelli's advice is not a call to arms for the power-hungry, but a sober acknowledgement of how power operates in the real world, and a recognition that, in order to preserve the state and ensure its survival, leaders must be prepared to make difficult, sometimes morally ambiguous, decisions